SDM Software's Change Manager for Group Policy and Intune just got an uplift, and there's some great new capabilities. First off, I need to log in, and we're going to support normal native logins, Windows Auth if you're doing additional creative things in your Windows Auth world, or SSO if you want your Entra IDs to be able to manage the environment. I'm going to log in as an AD account. This account is what's called a product administrator. So they have a high level of roles. I've actually delegated this user more roles because it makes my demos easier. So the first thing everyone sees, regardless of their delegation level, is this dashboard. And it's contextually showing how many objects, configuration objects in these different areas are you accountable for, and what state are they in. So it's not actionable, but it's interesting data to keep track of, especially if you start to see a lot of reds in here for rejected items. But really the magic happens in these top three nodes. If you notice on the left-hand side, I have dashboard, my objects, and search settings. So most of our administrators who are doing operational work, editors and the like, that's the only three nodes that they will see. My objects is where they do most of the work. They're going to find what they need to find, either through sorting tables, filtering, or even, well, we have a new feature in the current version of the product called tagging. So I can take any group policy object that I want, and I can create a tag for it. And I can manage those tags in many different ways. Let's say usability level 3. So now I have this GPO is tagged. So if I need to find all objects of that usability level or that security level, I'm going to have an easier time at it. So a really nice feature to help you in your organization. But again, this is where most of your editors, approvers, whatever, are going to live. This is their console for managing endpoint config. And this is where they will look at reports on the GPOs. Either they can look at all of the settings that exist within that group policy object, including all of the general data, the metadata, and they can check it out. They can make their edits, check it back in. And remember, we go into more detail on the operational workflows in other videos, but when I edit, when I check out an object for editing, I have additional capabilities available to me that natively don't exist, for example, in AGPM. So yes, I can go and edit my settings, pretty straightforward. It's going to launch an editor and I can get that done. Or I can add, remove WMI filters, or I can edit applicability permissions, such as apply, deny, apply, those kinds of things. So a lot of things about managing the GPOs, the configuration objects at a high level, are included as first-class citizens for our change management flows. I'm just going to undo that checkout for the sake of this demo. So another interesting capability here is imagine my editor, imagine Kevin's the editor, he needs to do something, find something. So we have this really great capability to search individual settings and configuration objects that are being managed. So here I'm just going to look for a keyword, and here I can find all of the GPOs that reference that keyword. There's a lot more, obviously, interesting scenarios here, but the keyword search is super simple. Well, imagine I need to care about Intune as well as group policy. This is a really great opportunity to help you determine that even though a setting that you have configured appropriately in group policy was successful, that doesn't mean there's not a lingering setting also impacting devices on the Intune side. So you get to keep track of both, or either, right? If you're just an Intune shop or just a group policy shop. Great capability. So anyway, that's really it from an operational side, the dashboard, my objects, and searching. From an administration side, though, we have to do things like define the delegation model. And the delegation model is quite interesting because it's been rich for a while, but we just added a few new roles here to sort of round out the experience. My user, Kevin, is logged in as a product administrator. That's typically the person who first deploys the product, and then they may delegate that role to another high-level IT person so that they can help get it configured. Operationally speaking, we have auditors who need to come in and check out the logs. We have a deleted objects experience, so we need someone to be able to restore objects that have previously been deleted. That's a privileged or delegated task. And we have a new reporting experience, which I'm going to show you in a moment, that is controlled by whoever has rights to administer those reports. And then the last two over here are my creator roles. This means you do not have to give native rights to individuals to create objects in Intune or in GP. So lots of interesting roles. On the object level itself, we by default provide roles for approvers and editors. And I tend to suggest people use groups for their targets, for their delegations. We do provide an opportunity to add a third role or another layer of approval, however you want to look at it, that we call deployer. And the deployer role would simply show up as a separate column, and it would be part of the workflow. Editors check out, edit, check in, approvers review those changes, those proposed changes, and approve or reject. And if they approve, the deployer would get a notification that says, hey, this needs to get deployed. And then they would click the button that commits those changes to production. So deployer is an interesting role for the right organization that needs it. The default configuration has two operational roles, editors and approvers. We also get a little more interesting on the GP side to manage what we call restricted policies. So imagine you have someone who only manages user-based scripts or only manages computer-based scripts. You can carve those out as restricted policy settings, and then you can delegate those individually. Right? So that means an editor goes in to check out and edit a GPO, and they're restricted to manage script settings. And they go and manage their script, they update their settings, but they may have stepped on maybe an admin template setting. On check-in, they'll get an error that says, hey, you're not allowed to do this. So again, another nice granular level of delegation available for you. I want to jump down to another area that I like to combine into the delegation model. This is called administrative containers. Like tags, this is really a construct that's there to help you organize and keep your environment sort of tightly controlled. An admin container is a virtual container that you can create. I'm going to say this is for admins who manage IT. And once I create those containers, I can add different objects to the containers. And you can see from a types perspective, I can add Intune profiles, GPOs, OUs, even domains or sites or admin containers as well. But what I'm going to do here is pick these objects that I may want to include in this admin container. Now, as you can probably already imagine, the beauty of this is now you have a delegation one-to-many model. So now I can delegate to these three objects as one, as opposed to having to deal with them separately. So that's a great benefit, very valuable capability that I like to align with our delegation model. Then let's talk about operations a little bit more. Here is my audit log. So an auditor can come in and see all of the transactions that are happening within the environment, who's doing what, when is that happening. Probably good for both accountability and forensics. If I need to look back at something. We also have an application, a native Windows app log that is tracking some additional details that can be helpful at times. And also not a bad thing to tie into your SIEM if you tend to do that with Windows logs. But that's the auditor experience that can come in. They can export this, and you can export to a CSV, and then you can actually use that data in a more meaningful way. Just a reminder, PowerShell commandlet's available for all of these capabilities. So imagine you had a job that ran and just exported the audit log once a month and put it into a data model that fed a dashboard. Incredible opportunities there. And then one of my favorite new features that we've gotten in here is reporting. So across my different types of configuration objects, I have the ability to manage reports. Maybe I just want to look at over the past month, what kinds of Intune profile changes have occurred. I can quickly see all of the changes to the objects, who is the editor, who is the approver, comments. It's really pretty nice and super easy, right? To be able to capture that and then send it around as appropriate. Again, PDF, HTML, or CSV, so you can get creative about how you consume this data. So whether it's Intune profiles or GPOs or containers themselves, who's checking out OUs and managing change across organizational units, meaning what links exist, what link orders have changed, those kinds of things. So again, reporting is rich, really nice across the three key areas of configuration objects. And then your admin is going to get into general configuration. I want to highlight a few things here. Operationally speaking, I can set a GPO name rule to pattern match. So when someone tries to create a new object, it will match against that. Very helpful. I can require my admins to comment on configurations that they check in. SMTP is configured for our notification system. You choose what DC is being targeted by our service. You're going to have a one-to-one relationship there per domain. Core reporting, info, and then operationally speaking, when I have new objects in the environment, I need to take control of them. Many customers actually use our automation model to do jobs like, let's monitor Active Directory, let's monitor Intune for new objects that have not been controlled by Change Manager yet, control them. So they can build that engine so that things just come on board as needed instead of having to manually come in and do all of that stuff. But again, you can. If I need to manually come in and do it, I can look for all of the non-controlled objects. I can select one and I can simply take control, and then it's in my system. So whether it's a GPO or a container or an Intune profile, I'm going to have that available to me. So again, just like on GPO, what's not controlled? Maybe I have one of these things and I want to be able to manage that. All right, now going on to the cloud. So Intune, our service for Change Manager, needs to connect to Intune, needs to connect to Entra. And we do that through enterprise app registrations. So those of you who have been diving into Entra for a long time know this well. It's a very common capability. If you're new to it, it's pretty simple. But we also provide a tool that helps you create this stuff if necessary. But you just create these objects with the right API permissions and the right admin consent approved, they're assigned, and then you add that data here and you're good to go. And that's what allows me to do things like look at my cloud, look at my Intune instance and find all of the configuration objects that are there for me. So those two things, SSO and Intune, are really key. And then alerting. I mentioned briefly the notification system. When things occur, how are emails flowing around the system? We also have a capability that if a change occurred out of band of Change Manager, it will pick that up and alert and send that to logs. So that's really great capabilities so that you can make sure that things aren't being managed outside.
Another exciting new feature in the tool is our agent. So the agent sits on a domain controller and it allows us to proactively monitor your native group policy environment to ensure that changes aren't being made outside of Change Manager for Group Policy and Intune. And that means if someone were to edit a GPO directly in Group Policy Management Console, if they have excessive rights, or someone were to go directly to Sysvol and try to muck with files, we're going to catch it. We're going to grab that information, write it to our logs, notify the system. You'll be able to address that immediately.
Anyway, that's a pretty long-winded walkthrough of Change Manager for Group Policy and Intune. Come, give us a call. Let's talk more. There's a lot to go over, but hope this is helpful.